Welcome to Breaking Sales, a podcast dedicated to helping you have tough, meaningful, and rewarding conversations with your prospects and clients. In meaningful, what we mean is these are the conversations you truly feel like you are the prospect or client's conversational peer. There's no anxiousness or uncertainty holding you back. You feel a sense of calm and confidence in asking the tough questions. You're not thrown off by the bad news, and you expect the prospect to think about and invest into the conversation as much as you do. On Breaking Sales, we use the filter of psychology and innate human behavior to deconstruct the many misleading sales approaches that actually work against your efforts to build trust and close the business. Let's get started. Trust. It's the cornerstone of all relationships, personal and business. What is trust? It's an exchange of feelings, thoughts, and experiences. I've had other trust experts on the podcast in the past, like Dr. Ken Grayson and Dr. Nicole Roberts-Fisher, and I'm excited to share this recent conversation I've had with Dr. Paul Zak. What's valuable about this conversation, Paul and I actually work through some of the competing viewpoints regarding how you build trust in sales, whether it's through questions, stories, and how you prepare. Paul has spent over 20 years studying the neuroscience behind why human beings trust, cooperate, and connect. And what he's found has a direct implication for every sales conversation you've ever had or will have. He's a behavioral neuroscientist, the author of multiple books, including Trust Factor, Immersion, and The Little Book of Happiness. And he's also the founder of the company Immersion Neuroscience. Today, we're sitting down with Paul to talk about trust. And what we're discussing isn't simply theory. It's both measurable science and biology. A lot of it will challenge what you think you know about how trust actually gets built. And if this episode resonates with you, you might also enjoy episode 96, Evolving Trust with Dr. Kent Grayson, where we go deep on the origins of trust, risk tolerance, and what it takes to earn credibility with a prospect. It's worth a listen if you're interested in exploring this trust topic further. Let's get started. Paul, great to have you.
Thank you, Dan. Great to be with you.
Yeah, where are you right now? Are you West Coast right now, or are you somewhere else?
West Coast, San Diego. Come visit.
Well, with the 30, 40 mile an hour winds, I might. That's what it's like here. So I've been thinking about our last conversation when we dove into on trust and all that. And then I went through a lot of your research, your TED Talk, obviously your books, which we'll talk about. But one of the things that I thought was, okay, let's just start with the basics. All right. So as you know, we teach high performance in sales. And so nothing seems to be, at least decade after decade, more important than trust when it comes to sales. And so I thought about it, right? How does trust work in a sales interaction where you have one person who has to make the decision, the prospect, on do they do something different? Do they make a change? And we all know how human beings love change. But then on the other side, right, you have the sales professional who's trying to influence the change. And I just thought about, man, how does that trust play out? There's so much complexity going on there.
Right. So, my work's in behavioral neuroscience. And so I'm going to answer that from a brain perspective. There are certainly other perspectives. So before we get to sales, let's go one step back, which is, how do we persuade anybody? Right. I've been married 30 years. I'm still trying to persuade my wife to stay married to me. Right. If I'm a total jerk for the next year, she'll dump me or something. So when we look at the human brain, we are anatomically very different than most other mammals in that we are hypersensitive to social emotional information. So we want to be around the other humans. We want to interact with them, and interacting means we want to potentially be influenced by them. We want to fit in. Great. Who am I going to interact with? Who am I going to listen to? Who will I be persuaded by? I've got to allow you to approach me. I've got to allow my brain to have space to actually listen to what you're saying, to absorb all the information I'm getting from you. And so that's where trust comes in. And so what we find in many, peer-reviewed published scientific publications is that we have a mechanism of the brain, largely driven by this neurochemical oxytocin, that signals when someone around us appears to be trustworthy. So the key issue there is, how might I induce that oxytocin release in the person I want to persuade? And part of that is really just being authentic, right? So it's coming in with good intentions. It's the stuff you teach, coming in with benevolence, focusing on creating value, being of service. So oxytocin is a reactive neurochemical. That is, the basal levels are not very interesting, but if you connect to me, if you're authentically open to me, if you're vulnerable, if you're helping, the brain releases oxytocin and motivates that reciprocation. So think of oxytocin as the biological basis for the golden rule. You're nice to me, I'll be nice to you. So in the sales setting, that means if you give me service in some way, if you are helpful to me, then I want to reciprocate. And that reciprocate might not be a sale. It might be a recommendation. It might be, I'll remember you for next quarter, right? It doesn't have to be something happening just now. We've got to set the stage so that the brain of that person we want to persuade will induce oxytocin release and some related neurochemicals we could talk about.
So I want to be careful there as I'm listening, right? You said, right, if you're nice to me, I'll be nice to you, right? I get that. The challenge sometimes in sales is that there is a large population of sales professionals who are innately wired to be socially warm, extrovert, and connect with people, right? And what they'll do is the nice part, they overuse it. They overemphasize it, where they call themselves relationship folks. But what happens is they get caught all in the nice, and they never take a step back to ask some of those important questions to really help someone think about making the change, right? They get caught in that path that, hey, if I'm nice and hey, if they like me, they'll eventually buy from me. But the statistics actually show that's not necessarily the case at all. So that was just interesting when you said that. So is there other ways to have that reciprocation occur? Not just, hey, if I'm nice, you're nice, but is there other ways that we do that in our interactions that builds trust?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess that's the key question. So what we've shown in published research, by the way, with free, this is not, based on college students. This is 20 years of research in the top scientific journals. With free roaming humans, lots of neuroscience. I've done 10,000 blood draws in the last 20 years to measure changes in neurochemicals. I mean, really, really a lot of deep science here. One of the key things we found in high stakes, so there's a $500 amount of money that people can earn. These are working adults, 25 to 50, so real humans. In that, the best predictor of me trusting you is when our brains actually synchronize, right? So if I'm in this I win, you lose situation, like I know you're a salesperson, I'm not confused about that, right? If I'm the person that you're selling to. But I want to have that synchronization, right? I want to be able to have a communication, and the greater the synchronization of our brains, the more likely that you're going to trust me. And so that synchronization is interesting. So movement will do that, right? Think about how many great meetings you've had taking a walk or walking down the hallway at a conference center, right? Sitting, not good, right? It could be, I think one of the important things is what I call listening with your eyes. I want to give you my full presence. I want to really absorb what you're saying and not think about the next clever thing I'm going to say or going through my sales script. Really want to listen with my eyes, but movement will do it. Any activity is great. Singing, dancing, going on a zip line. So, all these things that sometimes particularly like an enterprise salespeople will do, like, hey, we're going to take you out for a horseback ride or whatever that is. Actually, that's pretty smart, right? Because now we're having this shared experience. We get to know each other. It brings those barriers down. And there's got to be this level of giving, right? So I think that's the key part is if I'm authentically giving to you and we're literally in sync. And this is, again, all measurable. This is not a theory. This is actually measurable. And so think about how to synchronize the brains together. Are we both on the same page? You have a problem that you need solved. I have what I think is a solution to it. Let's talk about how I can solve your problem.
Now, I know last time we talked, you actually have, is it a software? Is it a platform that aligns or connects with Whoop? Mm-hmm. So that you can actually tell, or the individual can tell when the trust has been created?
Yes. So let me go back one or two steps. And the software's free, so people can just grab it from the app and Play Store. So when we look, this is work funded by the Department of Defense and other agencies that tasked us post 9/11 to identify combinations of signals in the brain that would accurately and consistently predict what people would do after a message or an experience. So the idea was to give warfighters this new superpower called persuasion. Again, something humans are doing all the time, but what's the underlying neuroscience of that? So we spent millions of dollars of U.S. taxpayer money. And basically two things need to happen for that persuasion to occur. Again, knowing the mechanisms is useful here because then I can ask what accentuates it, what inhibits it. And right, that's what the Department of Defense wanted. And then subsequently we started a company so that anyone can measure what the brain loves. That's the way to understand it. Versus this dopaminergic response. I've got to be present. Right. If I'm distracted, Dan, I'm not looking at you. That's not going to be a good experience for either of us. But the second is that communication has to generate emotional resonance. It's got to generate in the receiver this oxytocin response that can I use one bad word? Okay. So one of our early subscribers to the software platform called this network in the brain that values social emotional experiences, which I've called immersion. It's a combination of signals. So I gave it a name. He called it the give a shit measure. And that's really correct from a neuroscience perspective. The brain is so energy hungry, it just wants to idle. And we all have this experience, right? Where we're trying to talk to that cute guy or girl in the bar or a sales prospect or whatever, and they're just not plugged into us. So the first thing is to be present, right? Get their attention some way. I don't know, make some noise, do whatever that is. Hey, Bob, great to see you. Like put some energy into it. And neurologic immersion is contagious, and we know that intuitively, right? If I come in tired and speaking in a monotone, you don't care. But like, Bob, this is great to see you. Let's grab a beer, right? And you're like, okay, well, this is fun. I'm already having fun. But now I've got to actually get you to care about what I'm saying and get that brain synchronization. And so this stuff we all do normally. How's your family? How's Margaret? Oh, your son was struggling in high school. How's he doing? Oh, building that relationship. Like, I know you, I see you, I recognize you. Again, just the selling to me is just like building a relationship, a romantic relationship or relationship with your kids. You've actually got to be interested in the other human and the issues that he or she's having.
See, that's it. So as you were talking, Paul, I'm thinking, okay, I've had many of salespeople in front of me who have, so how's your family and blah, blah, blah. And I don't bite because when they do it, I don't know what I'm picking up, but it's not genuine. And so I don't engage in the topic. But there'll be people I'll be sitting across from and again, meet them for the first time, but they'll ask it. And it's different. I'll be like, well, thanks for asking. And I'll share a little bit. And then I'll ask them about their family. And the next thing you know, right, you're having a 5 or 10 or 15-minute conversation with someone that you just met that you're completely immersed in about your family and their family. Yet someone else could ask the same question and you're like, yeah, I'm not interested. Is that just me? Maybe that's just me.
No. You're an odd person. No. Well, we can talk about the psychopaths, which I've done a lot of studies on. So the software we built is called SIX, S-I-X. It's free. It's in the app and Play Store and measures in real time the value your brain's getting from experiences. What's interesting about that is I said that neurologic immersion is contagious. So a we published some research recently in collaboration with a very high-end European high-end retail luxury clothing company that I can't mention the name because I'm sure I'm NDA'd. And they had the salesperson measure their neurologic immersion to try to understand the 80-20 rule. Why do 20% of the sales associates sell 80% of the merchandise? And so what they found is that they can, by measuring the salesperson's immersion, like how valuable that experience was to the salesperson, they could predict with 80% accuracy which customers bought. And the greater the neurologic immersion in the salesperson, that is, the more valuable that experience was to the salesperson, the more money these people spent. And again, to be very clear, these are real customers in real luxury retail. The average spend in this study was $323, and the max was over $2,500. So this is real money, real people. This is not, again, students for $5 doing something in the lab, which no one believes. So, okay, so what are the tells? So how do I do that? That's the key. One of the great ways is being vulnerable, right? So if I'm the salesperson, I want to just be open. Like, yeah, sure, I want to come in with some energy and be warm, but also be like, yeah, it's been a tough week. Like, let's just grab a beer and talk about what you're doing, or coffee or whatever. And so just opening up yourself gives us that signal that you're genuine, you're open. And so sometimes it's hard to do.
And we mirror that, don't we?
Absolutely. So you're open. Now I feel like, oh, you're opening up yourself emotionally. I mean, I need that oxytocin release. So again, the dopamine part, the attentional part's pretty easy. We know how to get people's attention, usually. But then really being open, and then you get this brain synchronization. On the outside, when you said, the guy who's going through the script, oh, how's your family, Dan? What we found in these studies is that when people communicate, we measure brain activity and then predict whether they will play nice or not, like sharing $500. The people who cheat are stressed out. Now, unconsciously, right? So we're measuring this physiologically. By the way, they're also unhappy. These are salespeople who are, as we talked before we started recording, they're looking for the win-lose kind of situation. I'm going to take from you and I'm going to get my sales quota, as opposed to let's look at this long-term relationship, driving up customer lifetime value, approach. And so again, for listeners, if you see this person who seems stressed, who seems nervous, right, that could be a tell that they're just going through the motions and they're not really interested in your outcome.
Yeah, when you were talking about that and then the immersion part, because we talk about that a little bit in our sales approach, where the more you can generate immersion from the prospect, the more likely you are to have better conversations and move toward a path where you might win that deal. But that immersion, the key is trying to figure out, right, how to create it, how to draw them in, how to give them the chance to feel safe that they can be drawn in. And what I think about the two best ways to do that, and they're kind of different. One, stories. Two, meaningful questions. And so, I'm curious, right? When we think about sharing meaningful stories or asking meaningful questions, I wonder if one's more trusting than the other, or if it just depends on the individual or the circumstance.
Yes, and so we've actually run a number of studies on that. So for the DoD funding that we had, we looked at a whole variety of different kinds of communication to identify whether this induced enough neurologic immersion that would influence your behavior. So again, this sort of give a shit measure. I've got to break through and go, holy crap, this is really important. I got to do this thing now. By the way, touch is a great way to do that. So, I do really invasive studies. I draw blood. I give people drugs, and so I'm always, putting electrodes. So I'm a touchy guy. So in a not a weird way, like in a nice way. But
what is like you're a phlebotomist, right?
Phlebotomist, yeah. And so I was at a meeting yesterday, and like an investor meeting, and I'm always touching people's shoulders. I give people hugs. It's just my normal mode of being anyway. But that's also a great brain hack. So be a genuinely warm person, don't fake it. Although you can fake it till you make it. You can kind of practice. Okay, so is it stories or is it questions? So in doing all these studies with millions of dollars of taxpayer money, we have found the best way to sustain immersion so I can generate this peak where I go, oh, holy crap, I got to do this thing. Again, these studies were all based on behavior, not based on intentions or feelings. Dan, you're very thin, but if you told me you're going to lose 15 pounds this year, like that's my intention. I'm like, that's nice. If you told me you really did lose 15 pounds, okay, now we should talk, right? That's interesting. So these are all, predicting real observable behavior. So it's, again, not a BS stuff. And again, publicly, Accenture and Saatchi and Shachi and Toyota Trucks and on and on and on. People use this all the time, our software platform. So, unless all those companies are stupid, then it probably works. We have found that storytelling is, in fact, the most effective way to sustain neurologic immersion. There's going to be a caveat that's going to come back to questions. So I'm going to just put a pin on that for a second. So storytelling, what is that? Introducing characters at human scale who have the problem that sales prospect potentially has. Like, hey, I had a customer just like you. He lives in Cincinnati, and his issue was that he couldn't blah, 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 just like you're facing. So now as a salesperson, I understand your problem, or I'm relating it. Or I could say, hey, that's how I understand the issue you're having. Am I right? Oh yeah, that's about what I'm struggling with. Okay, great. Well, here's what this guy in Cincinnati did. So we built our software so that he could blah, blah, blah. This human scale story with authentic emotions, with some kind of crisis, where now I'm generating that emotional resonance in the listener, right? So it's essentially a people like you or people like us kind of story that seems very effective. So the solution is built into the story. The caveat, Dan, is that there's a subset of the population between 5 and 10% who love questions, and the story is going to be less effective. So those are individuals in the Myers-Briggs topology, and we can talk about whether that's valid or not, who are so-called intuitive perceivers. So that's actually my personality. I'm a skeptic about everything. I want data. I don't care about your cute story, right? And so if you can kind of identify the personality traits of that individual, for example, these are not, by the way, like engineers, computer programmers. Those tend to be very rules-based individuals. The intuitive perceivers are creatives. I call them architects. So they're trying to figure out structures, and so they want to know the mechanisms behind things. So, sometimes these are engineers, and so really think about that personality. What's going to resonate with that person? So those who are most affected by stories are people by personality who are agreeable and empathic. That may not be your customer. For those, the stories work great. If you're more a technical and creative, technical and builder kind, creative builder, technical builder, then you probably want questions.
So if I think about it, right, financial CFO type, my guess would be more often than not questions. I could be wrong. Am I wrong?
CFOs tend to be rules-based individuals, so they don't want creative solutions. They want the facts. So you do want facts-based, but I could still communicate those facts in a story. So again, I had a CFO just like you. That's the people like us. This is for listeners. They don't do this anymore apparently, but I remember in the hotel rooms for a while, they had like 82% of the people who stayed in this hotel room, reuse their towels to save the environment. So that's the people like us. So those stories really resonate with most of us.
Yeah. But then if I think about some other types of decision makers, like more creative decision makers, right? Maybe more people-driven types of decision makers, amicable decision makers, like whatever, right? What you're suggesting is the stories are a great way to build some trust, to make some connectivity, to help them immerse into the conversation with you.
And to illustrate the solution in a human scale way. You may want to come back with all the technical details, perhaps, of your solution. So I'm sure you know this, but Accenture, EY, all the big professional services organizations, for 15 years, because 15 years ago I was working with them on teaching their consultants to be storytellers. So they will lead with a story and then follow up with the technical details. Because the story everyone understands, and you understand it at this sort of visceral level. And then a subset of the people, like the CFO or whatever, want those technical details as well. But I can still lead with the story.
So if you were to make a recommendation to our listeners right now, what would be the top, I don't know, I'll just say 3 or 4, maybe 5 things you choose that they need to be aware of when they are storytelling?
Yeah, one is you have that story be authentic. It might be a combination of previous clients. Don't go into storytelling about your recent trip to Hawaii. No one cares. So, uh, so basically, in my book Immersion, I have sort of a 5-point algorithm on how to effectively persuade people. So I'll just go through those 5 points. So the first I call staging. Get people relaxed. We intuitively know this, but sometimes in the sales setting, we feel like I only have half an hour, 20 minutes with this person. I got to move fast. Relax. So I want to open up some space in your brain for you to listen to me, right?
You may say that that's intuitive, but I think you nailed it. I don't know. I think a lot of people really get messed up on the staging because they get all caught up in, oh my gosh, I've only got 30 minutes.
Right, right. You got plenty of time. You can do that pitch in 3 minutes. Honestly, you know this, Dan. You're a pro. You don't need 20s or 30. So first of all, make them comfortable. Do you want a cup of coffee, a glass of water? Do some chit chat. Just be a human, right? I know it's hard when we're going from meeting to meeting. So S is for staging. So the acronym is CERTA, SIRTA, like being certain I'm going to persuade you. So CERTA. The I is immersion. That's lead with a story, even if you're going to follow up with technical details or whatever those are. So lead with a story, have this be an authentic story. It could be a conglomeration, but it should be as real as possible, because if you're faking the story, then unconsciously we pick that up pretty well. I'm not going to get that brain synchrony I talked about. The R is for relevance, right? That story's got to be relevant to you as the buyer. It's got to solve a problem that buyer or potential buyer has. So it can't just be, I have one story I use for everything. It's got to be a story relevant to that person. So in the brain, relevance, because the brain, again, is modulating this big energy overhead, relevance actually recruits more brain resources. This is well established. The T is for targeting. So find that super fan. Who are you going to make look like a hero? By purchasing your product or service, right? So think about who that super fan is, and that's the person that's going to give you leverage. It may not be the person with a checkbook, and this gets complicated. It could be that you have a middle manager or someone who's going to advocate for you internally. That's your internal champion. So think about who that super fan is. Eventually, you got to get a check, right? But still, you want someone to advocate for you, and it's lovely. And these super fans will do it because this product or service is so meaningful to them, helps them so much, or they just want this thing to happen, or they're frustrated with what they're not doing. And then the A is for action. So what we found is that, again, measuring neurologic immersion, which is always kind of a sine wave, because the brain, once it expends this metabolic energy to be, have this high immersion state, it exhausts these neurons. So then you have a trough. The ask for the sale should come at a peak immersion moment, or in other words, at a high emotionality component. So often we tell our little story, the narrative resolves, and at the end, you see this in ads all the time, at the end, there's the call to action. Too little, too late. If you can actually have that peak immersion moment at the end and then ask for the sale, it's better. Or make the ask in the middle, right? So identify asking your friends or practicing in the mirror or using our 6 app to measure it. Now look at where that pitch goes. Where's that peak immersion moment? So just to be concrete, and I'm almost done. I've looked at, thousands and thousands of ads with neurologic data. And oftentimes, even if the call to action is not at a peak immersion moment, you might see the branding, a logo on the side of a car, or a person with a logo polo on, or whatever that is. I want to get that relationship to problem and solution at that peak immersion moment to move that person to make a decision.
All right. This is very interesting. My gut is intent matters on all of this, though. What's the intent of sharing the story, right? Because we as human beings pick up lots of messages outside of just the words, right? Whether it's the eye contact, the body language, the head nodding, or whatever it might be, right? But intent is, if someone shares that story, and you may say it doesn't matter, which would be very interesting, but if someone shares a story to move the other human being, the buyer, to what they want, right, to make the sale, versus sharing the story to help educate the buyer, to help that buyer feel maybe that sense of courage that maybe doing something different would be helpful. There's a difference there in that intent. And my gut is that has to matter.
Well, we get that right away. Absolutely. So are you a taker or are you a giver, right? That's what we're trying to understand. The giver is what induces that synchrony and that reciprocal oxytocin release. Taker, You're trying to take from me. Yeah. And the courage is the key word to me. This is a new thing. It's a new product. It's a new service. And now I have to justify this to my colleague, to my boss. So I've got to give you the tools to go, oh, this is going to make your world so much better. You're going to be a hero for doing this. And I, the salesperson, I'm going to be here to support you, or our customer success group will be here to support you. So we know there's a little bit of friction there to get this thing going because you've used a, say, different piece of software. That's all right. We're on the team. We're partners in this, and I think that's a key word. We're invested in you as a long-term customer. And also, Dan, I'm a really cheap guy, so I hate to waste money. I'd much rather invest in a relationship to build up CRV than pay for CAC, customer acquisition costs. CAC makes me mad every month when I see those numbers. I get pissed off about paying for CAC. So, delight that customer, and then you have them for life.
Here's a quick reminder that if you're enjoying this episode, you might also enjoy my conversation with Dr. Kent Grayson in episode 96. Give it a listen on Apple Podcast, YouTube, or Spotify. Here's an interesting question, Paul. We teach a bit of a process that's kind of based on the psychology on how human beings do make decisions. All right. And we try to keep it very basic, very simple, but right, the first step or phase in any sales call would be, determine how, if, when, and where does this prospect need help, right? Number one, right? And it may not need to include you yet. Let's just determine how, if, when, and where they do need help. Two is if they do need help, right? Is it worth their time reflecting on making a change? Because that's a big piece of how human beings make decisions, right? It might be one thing that we recognize, hey, I can improve here. I have room to get better here. Great. But it's a whole different thing for someone to say, and you know what? I'm going to invest the time, effort, and money to get better here. Because I think, I've read a long time ago, and I always ask people, hey, do you have pain in their life? And they always say, yes. Do you solve it all? And they're like, no. So where in that example, right, my gut would be is you're putting the story in phase two, where you're trying to share with them the story to help them determine if doing something different is worth their while. Follow?
I do. So correct me if I'm wrong, but in my experience, having done a lot of enterprise sales myself, phase one, where I'm figuring out if you have a problem that needs to be solved, or a big enough problem that needs to be solved, I don't want to ask questions on that. I want to come in knowing that already. I want to do my research. So I come in as saying, here's what I see happening in your business, your division, and then come in with that solution so that I am saying, so it's this educating to sell, right? So here's some new things that we've seen in the marketplace. So again, for listeners, you know this already, but in the brain, uncertainty about outcomes is processed just like stress. We do not like uncertainty. It is very uncomfortable. So if I, the potential buyer, are going to do this new thing that you're trying to sell me to do, you've got to reduce that uncertainty as much as possible. I've got to make it so comfortable for you to say yes to my decision. And that's knowing that prospect, knowing him or her if you can, but also knowing the problem that that person faces.
Yeah, we do actually teach something a little bit more of the opposite. And I can share it. I'd be interested in your thoughts on it. But so, most decision makers know that a sales professional, there's probably some biases in play, right? The sales professional has a job. The job is to sell their product or service, right? And some are better at masking it than others, all right? If we go into a meeting where we've already told ourselves that this is where they probably need improvement, right? We become then attached to that outcome. We then become attached to that specific path. And when we become attached, it affects how we listen, what we listen for, and the questions that we ask. We lose our objectivity. which for most high performers in sales, whether it's management consulting or whatever it might be, that objectivity is so important because the decision maker feels it. So if I'm a CFO and I have a chance to work with a very talented but biased team or a very talented and objective team, I'm going to choose the objective team all day long because I know they're going to think more clearly and more critically on my behalf. Does that make sense?
I really like that. So yeah, now you're educating me, which is very interesting. Yeah, I think that is from a brain perspective, that attachment to an outcome can be very detrimental because the brain likes to be on this, build a model, stay on that model, don't deviate. But if you come in a little bit more open, you still have to do some research on the prospect, right? But yeah, just it's kind of like shut the hell up and listen, right? And you have the tools. I mean, certainly when I've done sales, I know the tools that I have, and I've had many, clients I've talked to, and I go, that's not a problem we can solve, but I do know a guy or I know a company that has a great piece of software or whatever. And, from in my experience, when you help someone else, they will recommend you 10 times over. So like, oh, this guy was great. Yeah, we don't use the software because we don't need it. But man, for the stuff you're doing, Bob, you should talk to Paul.
So that attachment, you nailed it. And I know I've been there and we've all been there, right? If we get attached to some kind of specific interaction, outcome, or experience, we tend to just, like I said, listen for what guides us toward whatever that is that we want. We tend to tune everything else out. And we only ask the questions that kind of guide us there. And so what I'm curious about is I love the art and the science, as you're talking about, the psychology too of sharing stories. I'm wondering out loud, how do you map really good questions with that skill and art of sharing really good stories? Because then you have both, right? Because good questions can build trust too, long as the right intent behind them. And then you align that with a really good story like you're talking about. That would seem to be like a good, like 1A and 1B.
Right. So what we've seen done, I'm just going to suppress the name, but a very large tech company has used our technology to have salespeople practice those stories in front of their peers. Is they develop a portfolio of 2 or 3 or 4 stories. So if I'm talking to you as the prospect and I see you have one of these 3 problems that our solution can solve, I've got a story, kind of built-in story that I've rehearsed that's really tight. Don't wing it on these stories. We should rehearse. We should be really good at it. Again, know where that emotional peak is, know when the ask should come. So I'm going to have those stories. Now, I can't solve every problem, right? And so if I sort of prepare in advance, I've got this way to communicate in an authentically emotional and vulnerable way, it sounds like you're having this kind of problem, right? So maybe you do start with the question and then have that story to illustrate a possible solution and go, is that, am I solving, is that going to kind of solve the problem that you're facing? And so maybe the story is integrated into the set of questions. Would that kind of be best practice for you?
It feels like it. So you made me think about something, and I'm really interested in asking you because of your expertise and all your research. Again, putting myself out there on this in terms of our philosophy, we teach a line of questioning that we call past, present, future. It's actually more past and future because what we found is most people talk pretty readily about the present. So you're in front of a prospect, and they say, hey, yeah, we're having a problem with X. We would actually teach the sales professional to ask some questions about X first before jumping to a story or expertise. So we would teach the sales professional, ask, can you give me an example of how that plays out? What have you guys done to try to fix it and solve it? How did that go? We teach them to go to the past and learn about the prospect's past on that problem because that tends to build some emotion from the prospect, right? Because we as human beings have this tendency to, right, put things under the covers or put things in drawers and closets, right? But we kind of, in this instance, want that prospect to feel a little bit of whatever they put in the drawer, whatever they put in the closet, so that they have a little bit of emotion there that's like, I have been dealing with this for a while, or I have tried to solve it. It didn't work. What am I doing about it now? Kind of get them in that little moment of tension before a story to kind of see if we can pull them in. Does that make sense?
I think that's a brilliant approach. So that attention or that uncomfortableness by revisiting the past is a great way to set up. Now I'm attentive. The prospect. I'm attentive because now you've made me uncomfortable. Like, oh yeah, the stuff we've been doing doesn't really work. Now come with the story. So I had a client just like you who had a similar problem. Maybe tell me what he or she did, and then use that to say, okay, is that kind of, am I hearing you right? So that I'm using the story as part of that dialogue, but I think you're right. I think start with, let me make sure I understand the problem you're having to see if I can help you. And even the language, I'm sure you teach this, but words like help, words like service, like all those are really important words. And again, because you also want to get to a fast no, if you don't want to spend an hour with this person if they're not going to buy. So like, actually, that's not a problem that we can really solve. But again, I may know another company, or gosh, if you ever have this other problem that our services can fix, we can help you with that. But gosh, super great to meet you. And I hope we stay in touch. I'm happy to walk away.
Now this one I know is a little different. I'll be very interested in your thoughts. Future. And I know the story helps with it, but right, if a human being is going to make a decision for change, right? And well, by the way, there's lots of levels of it too, right? Me going to a different restaurant tonight's a little bit different than other changes I'm contemplating. But if a human being is going to make a decision for change, usually, I think, Paul, right? We've got a vision for either what we're going to solve and avoid into the future, or what we're going to create and experience in the future. That tends to motivate us to be okay with some of the uncertainty around change. And so a story, right, seems to clearly articulate what that could look like for someone, right? What that experience could be, what they would gain if they did make a change. Am I connecting that right?
Right. So
Paul, you could tell me no.
No. Let's go through the sequence. So I want to have you elicit that past uncomfortableness, because what we're doing now sucks at some level. It's not working. That induces this kind of stress response in me. The salesperson tell a story, and now that's going to help reduce that stress. Like, oh, I see a solution. And then if I can generate that emotional response, it's emotions that drive the decision. So I've got to get that emotional, we call it the emotional sale, right? I've got to sell you emotionally first before you cognitively go, I'm going to do this. So the way the brain works is that we ex post, essentially. After the decision's been made emotionally, then we tell the story consciously. Of course I'm going to buy from Dan. He's got the best software in the world, or whatever that is. So I think that seems to be the right sequence. So I think you really helped expand my knowledge as well in terms of, I'm thinking again, the neurologic mechanisms here. But I think if you can follow up and help me and the listeners, I think it would be very uncomfortable to have that, to make the other person uncomfortable. Like how as a salesperson do I induce that uncomfortableness without having you kind of freak out or want to not talk to me?
Well, I mean, that would come down to intent. Like we talked about a little bit earlier. If I try to do this, to your point, Paul, you're spot on. If I try to do what I just said with some past questions, then share the story, align the story. If I try to do any of that because I'm trying to get you somewhere that serves me, it's going to disintegrate quickly. It's going to blow up. It's going to be a disaster. Okay? Because you will be able to tell that I'm trying to actually get you to do something. I'm trying to get you to think something. I'm trying to dictate or guide you or strong arm you somewhere. But if I do it with the intent that I'm trying to help, that I am truly trying to figure out, is this something that's worth Paul's effort to make a change on? It'll be a very different experience for you. My words will be different. My questions will be different. The body language you pick up from me will be different. Why? Because up here, I'm just truly trying to help Paul. So that's a big rule of thumb on it. You can't do this if you're trying to persuade or manipulate.
Oh, that's job one. And again, even with our romantic relationships and kids. And so, yeah, I have certainly written magazine articles about you actually have to love your customer, right? If you don't like the word love, you could say care. But
You
I've got to be
have to
interested.
care.
Yeah, you really got to care about that human, right? Like I always think we're all in the service business, right? In any relationship you have, whether it's sales or family or friends, we're in the service business. So if I understand that my job is to be of service to others, then I'm interested in seeing if I can help you solve some problem that you may have. And I think, you said something so profound to me, which is new to me, but makes such sense. By having you revisit that problem that makes you uncomfortable, now you're more open to listening about a possible solution. And again, the storytelling should reduce that stress level where I go, oh, now I'm feeling more comfortable and connected to you as my guide to this solution. You're a guide. I don't even like the word sales professional. You're a guide or a teacher.
You're love the word. We sometimes use the word shepherding. You're trying to shepherd someone through the tough decision-making process, because it's not easy for any of us to decide on change. And like you said earlier in our conversation, there's sometimes a lot of risk involved.
Yeah, and uncertainty. Risk I can quantify, but uncertainty is the killer, right? So, and that's why I think we're really caring about you being a partner, using the right language. I'm going to be your partner in this solution. Oh man, that's reducing my stress response by 50%, right? As opposed to, one and done. I'm never going to talk to you again. So what we've seen, and you may do this as well. So certainly in software, I want to get that high CLV, is having that customer service person be part of the sales process. So as we're closing the sale, I'm going to have you meet Susan. She's going to be your touch point at customer success, and she'll check in with you once a quarter and ensure that everything you're doing is working well. And you have her number, her email, so you can call her or email her anytime, because we're partners with you, and we want to make this a great experience for you.
Yeah, no, we've seen the same thing, that when you bring in the resources who are going to service the account, whatever, right? The relationship. Yeah. There's the trust factor, the uptick in terms of success and so forth goes way up. Yeah.
Trust Factor, great name for a book.
What's that?
Trust Factor is a great name for a book. That's the name of my 2017 book. See, I got in your head. I unconsciously influenced you, Dan. You see how the sales worked? We bonded, and now I got you.
Yeah. And when you said it at first, I'm like, Trust Factor, and then I'm like, wait a minute, that's the name of Paul's book.
So I think, but we know, so we talked before for the listeners. We did talk, a month ago, and we sort of talked about what we would do on this. And then we chatted beforehand, and I like you, I think you like me. And so we are influencing each other. Our brains are literally synchronizing. And so in the app we built, the 6 app, you actually can see that synchronization if you share your data with somebody else. And it's so cool to see. It's not only mythical, it seems like we're quote in sync. Your brain's really synchronized. This is what it means to be a social creature. Our brains are like one superorganism, and that's what you want, right? Like, we're in this together. I don't want to take from you. I want to be there with you. I want to be in this journey with you. And also from the salesperson's perspective, and correct me if this is wrong, but at least when I've done sales, it feels so good when you solve a problem for somebody. Not only did I make the sale and that goes on my tally sheet or whatever, but I'm like, holy crap, this person had a really damn hard problem. And I think we fixed it for them, and it feels great.
You bring up an outstanding point. I've never thought about it maybe until you just said it. For me, I actually think I enjoy the fact that someone trusts me enough to solve the problem for them or with them. It's not even so much, I think, for me, that's solving the problem, which I know a lot of people love. I almost feel like for me, it's the fact that that company or that individual trusts me enough to help shepherd or guide the process to get the problem solved. That's what feels outstanding.
And that's why people stay in sales, right? And then, as you know, at least for me, I've become friends with so many people that use our software. The super users that you talk to them all the time, and we end up having beers or dinner or whatever, and you get to know their families. And it's really nice because you feel like, okay, we really are partners in this together. And yeah, at some point, even if you stop using our services, we can still be friends. Maybe you don't need them anymore. Maybe you solve the problem and you're doing something else. That's okay. It's great to know more people.
Let me ask you a question on that, and then I want to get to one of your books in particular, on the happiness piece. Some people try to be friends first with a prospect, and then they try to do business with them. Okay, others will do business with the prospect, then become friends with them. From a neuro standpoint, what's your take on that when I say that? When you think about human behavior, how we build trust, how our brains work.
Yeah, the former sounds manipulative to me. I want to be your friend, and then I'm going to have you buy something or whatever. I think, it feels like, sorry for the analogy, but sort of, having sex on the first date as opposed to getting to know you. So we have different goals. I'm a salesperson. You're a business person. You have a problem to solve. Let me be of service to you, and that can build a relationship that sometimes becomes a friendship. But I think it feels very manipulative, like, because we know you're a sales professional. I just think it feels slimy to me, kind of. Is that your sense as well?
Yeah, my sense is that I have found that those who I will do business with and those then who become friends from that business experience tend to be actually very good friends.
You've kind of earned the friendship in a way.
Yeah, there's just something there maybe, and that's part of it, right? Because you're doing business, you've built the trust, right? You've got those shared experiences now. But the relationship wasn't based on friendship. The relation was based on improving something, getting something solved, providing a service of some kind. And I've always found that the friendships that come out of those tend to be so much more genuine, and they tend to be like deeper, last longer.
Yeah. And I think that
Go ahead.
Go ahead. You go ahead. You got the show.
Well, I think we both shared this one, which is probably the way it should be, right?
It should be.
So I wanted to talk. I know you had 4 books, right? The Moral Molecule, the Trust Factor, Immersion, and then I think just recently was it the Little Book of Happiness?
Right.
Yeah, share a little bit about that. I mean, I try to tell my kids all the time, right? Happiness isn't something that you go find. Happiness is something you choose. Now, I may be giving them the wrong advice, so you better let me know now.
So, almost all of my research and companies I've started have focused on developing knowledge and technology so people can live longer, happier, and healthier lives. And research out of Oxford University last year showed that about 50% of people's happiness is due to having a rich social network. Sounds right. What the hell do I do with that? What does rich mean? So again, I'm a measurement guy. So because we have this technology to measure how much value the brain gets from social emotional experiences, we published research in the last 5 years, a bunch of research showing how much of that you need. And in fact, the app is called 6 because you need 6 of these well-defined high-value moments a day to build up your happiness, right? For these, you're sustaining your mood and your energy. By the way, happy people have more energy. They get more done. They're more attractive to be around as friends, as romantic partners. I'm sure as salespeople. So the little book of happiness takes the 45 cardinal virtues and gives you exercises and the science of investing in relationships and a measurement tool. The free app, there's a QR code in the intro of the book. You can actually measure if these are improving the quality of your relationships. And by having goals and objective measurement technology, there's a way to build those relationships. So I mentioned I was at we're not recording, but I had a meeting yesterday. And I got 4 of my 6 key moments. I have little bubbles. I'm showing Dan my app if you don't have video. And because I was talking to people, and this lovely group of people, these are investors, this nice investor meeting, and some of those people have already invested in my company, God bless them. And just like a lot of love in the room, a lot of people who are just high functioning, but really great people. And you're like, what a privilege to spend a day with some super interesting people. So what happened? I invested in relationships with those people over many years sometimes, right? I got to know them. We're working together. Are we friends? We're kind of I'm becoming some friends with them, but it just gives people scientifically valid exercises to build up the quality of relationships and then track that and see what's working for you. And all these are fun, right? So just fun stuff to do.
And when you say relationships, you're talking about life in general too.
Absolutely. Yeah. All kind of life. Right.
Whether it's a coworker, whether it's a neighbor, whether it's a spouse or whatever, right?
Yeah, exactly right. And so the trick here is that if I train myself to be a better connector, a better friend, these are investments. I'm investing in that relationship. Well, it becomes easier. So even from a sales or work perspective, now I'm just used to being a giver. I'm used to being a better partner for you, a better salesperson, and a better spouse, right? So what we find is that people who are happy have higher quality of life. And by the way, we've shown recently that the average person gets about 3 of these high-value moments a day. If you can move that to 6, you'll extend your life on average by 3 years. So these are 3 healthy years. So why? Because it's people that reduce our stress, that people that help us. And so we've got to invest now to get a return on those relationships. And we'll get a return currently, but these long-term, you have this, you're old enough like me, where you have guy friends who are like brothers. Like I call these the 3 a.m. friends, right? So you can call it 3 a.m. and go, I'm having a crisis, show up. I need you to come now. And I think I've done that once in my life with a very dear friend, like we're having a family crisis. And this guy got out of bed at midnight and came to my house. I'm like, you'll just need a couple of those people in your life. But it's because I've spent so much time with this guy. We've traveled, we've been through crazy stuff together, and we really invest in that relationship. So to bring that back for salespeople, if you can practice this with your family, with your friends, you're going to be a better connector. It's going to be more natural and easy for you to make those connections with your sales prospects.
All right. So my question is, what's some of the most interesting things you've uncovered, I think that's the right word, about happiness?
So the data show about 50% of our happiness is genetic. Some people are just born happier than others. Some people are just less happy. I think the most interesting thing...
I got so many people going through my head right now.
You know who they are, right? I'm going to say mother-in-law, but that's just me. I think the most interesting thing is that happiness is contagious. So if I want to spread happiness, it reflects back on me. So as a concrete example, and also because you figured out, Dan, I'm a Martian. I'm just trying to figure out what these humans are doing around me. Years ago, I started saying hi to people in elevators. Like, I think it's so weird that you're in a box and you pretend like there's no one else there. And I found
that's so true.
Half the people, you have this wonderful little 30-second conversation, like at a hotel or something, like, oh, where are you coming in from? The other half the people kind of freak out, which also somehow makes me happy. So either way, I feel like my job is to be the guide to making someone's day a little happier. And then they smile and they're happy and it reflects back on me. So just like with sales, give to get.
Yeah, that contagious part, I can think of folks that's so true.
And the opposite's true, right? Cranky people induce crankiness around them. So I'd rather be around Happy Harry than Grumpy Gus.
Can you be an amalgamation of both?
Sure, situationally, of course, right? So, we talked about oxytocin being the biological basis for the golden rule. And there's an anti-golden rule, largely driven by stress and by testosterone. So young males are not going to be empathic. They're not going to be generally going to be as happy as females, and as older males, our testosterone begins to fall by the time we hit age 30. So, I'm sure you're the same way, Dan. I'm a lot nicer person now at 60 than I was at 20, right? So
I don't know. You got to ask my kids. I don't know how they would feel about that.
Right. Ask for forgiveness. Hey, we were young. We didn't know what we were doing. So I think that's the thing I've learned, is that I can be a kind of happiness ambassador. And here's the interesting philosophical paradox. Even if you're the most selfish person ever, and you want to live a happier, longer, and healthier life, you have to give to others to gain that benefit. You need those strong social relationships, and you can only do that by investing in those relationships now.
It's interesting you say that. I mean, when I think about sometimes when you're in a conflict with someone, there are times where I will think about, do I raise the ante on the conflict? Do I ask this particular question, or do I make this particular observation? Or do I just not? And do I let it go? The ego part will say, you know what? They got it coming to them. I think right? But then the other side of me now will say, you know what, though, is it really worth my energy? What do I really gain? And more often than not, I'll just say, you know what, I'm not going to bother. And then I feel great about that once I come to that decision.
So as we age, we get better at what's called emotional regulation. That, I would do a lot of hand gestures while driving when I was younger, and now I just don't care. I'm like, whatever, you're having a bad day. So what I do I had a very unhappy mother-in-law who's now dead, but I just thought, this poor lady has a bad brain. She's unhappy, she's grumpy, she's not a nice person, but it's not my fault, and I can't fix her. And so just let her be, right? I'm not going to get sucked into the drama. It's not worth it to me. So anyway, I think, we get, I have a simple goal, Dan, to be slightly less stupid over time. And so I think I try to accomplish that, every year. So, people may want to follow that rule as well.
So I guess in wrapping up a little bit here from a time standpoint, how's the best way? I mean, first off, how's the best way for our listeners to get a hold of you or engage in your material? All right. And then what's the best way for them to get on your website and maybe experiment? I think you said 6th, you can download it, or you can.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's in the app. Can
you share some of those specifics? Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. So you can find me at your6.com, and the number 6. The app is free. Lots of free information on there, videos in all kinds of ways. And obviously, if you're listening to the show, you must be an awesome human. So you can email me there if you have questions. And I would say, don't take my word for it, or even Dan's word for it. Try it. Try this stuff out and see if it works for you. And you'll learn a lot about yourself, I think. So, like just having an app that tells you, like, it links to your calendar and your location. Like, here are the 3 things you did yesterday that were the most valuable to your brain that you probably don't know about.
So get into that. Hold on. That's very interesting. So yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So, learning about yourself, what I learned is I really like people. I'm an introvert. I don't talk much, but when I'm with people, I get so many of these high value moments. I'm like, oh, I have to remember to get out of the office, get out of the basement, go talk to humans. And so I think of this 6 app as my little grandma, just reminding me, Paul, go say hi to the humans, right? So anyway, I think that's fun.
But you can look back on like yesterday, and it will tell you what your high value moments were based on yesterday.
Exactly, right? And for those of us in sales, I think we're all in sales, by the way. Like, I was giving a presentation yesterday, kind of a investor pitch. Oh, I'm on stage. I'm giving, of course it's fun, right? That's great. Yeah, never seen a stage I want to get on at this point. So again, just reminding that, it's not a stressful thing. This is a privilege to talk about this technology I've developed, and to people who are interested, who might want to help, be on this journey with me. Like, that's so much fun.
Yeah. So do you do speaking?
All the time. Yeah.
All right. So if an organization right now is out there listening, and they're interested maybe in you coming to speak, how would they get a hold of you for that?
My agents are Bright Sight Speakers in Princeton, New Jersey, and there's a whole sheet there about how wonderful I am, apparently.
Okay.
May not be true. I mean, maybe it's crap, but at least there's a sheet up there you can see.
And that sheet that tells everybody how wonderful you are, that's on all the websites and all that as well.
Probably so. Yeah, probably so.
All right, Paul, hey, listen, it was great to have you on. I really enjoyed our conversation today.
Me too. Thanks for laughing with me.
Absolutely. Paul and I covered a lot of ground in this one. But if there's one thing I want you to sit with after this conversation, it's that trust is a biological process, not just a soft skill. And your prospects' brains are running the numbers on you whether you are aware of it or not. Your prospect is picking up on whether you're a giver or a taker. Giver in terms of you invest the time to ask questions, empathize, and share relevant selective stories. A taker, you skip to sharing expertise and whatever serves you best. So whether you're stressed or present, whether you actually care about their problem or you're just moving them toward an outcome that you want, each of these things can make or break the trust you build within your conversations. So before you go on your next sales conversation, ask yourself honestly, what is my intent in this conversation? Am I approaching this objectively with genuine curiosity? Am I ready to give this prospect the space to revisit what hasn't worked for them, what they've already tried, and what might be still frustrating them, to help them see that maybe change is possible? As Paul's research ultimately tells us, trust isn't something you build by being nice. It's about genuine objectivity, curiosity, and caring enough to ask the tough questions. Thanks for listening to Breaking Sales. Once again, if today's episode made you think differently about what's happening in your sales conversations, we'd love for you to leave us a rating and a review on Apple Podcast or Spotify. And to hit the like button if you're listening on YouTube. It's the fastest way to help us grow this community of people who are serious about changing how they approach sales. Until next time.